Ecological situation is becoming worse and worse, and especially for the resource supply is more and more scarcity in a scarcity stage. This caused the problem. The problem is that economic growth is caused by the loss of environment and ecological situation. Now we need to answer about ourselves. And we want, human beings want to have a better life. And what do we mean the better life? And we have more money in the pocket, or we have fresh air, or a beautiful view. And those two are the dilemma, especially in the developing countries. And if we want both, and at least current approach of growth is not appropriate. And the third driving force I would like to say is about the globalization. For China is under development process, but it's not solely growth itself alone. It's related to many of the international trade, international demand, or a lot of negotiation, a lot of exchange. And with the globalization, the producer and the consumer becoming one big system. Wherever there's a consumer, and those producers would try to do something to satisfy the producer, and in the meantime, to give the economic return. And since the last 30 years, especially, China is moved into the global trade family. And a lot of international trade happened, a lot of foreign investment come to China, and then China becoming the producer of the world. Those producers means produce within China, but provide goods to the world. And this is the third driving force. The fourth one is about the population issue. This is very typical to China. China has a very huge population base. Its growth rate is still very high, and the population is becoming the headache. And in the last 60 years, Chinese population increased a lot, increased to 200% in the last 60 years. That's, in the meantime, the population growth and the structure of population also changed. And at the beginning of 1950s, the Chinese population, especially the rural population, is very, very large. The urban population is less than 100 million. And nowadays, it already changed a lot. And at least this urban population becoming 400 million or more. Not only for that, urban population grows a lot, the urbanization expands a lot, but there's a big shift of labor within China. A lot of rural population want to find a job in the cities. They shift to the city during the springtime and work there, for temporary work there, and going back to spend their winter time in the rural areas. This has caused a lot of, a big flow of population within China. And those make a consequence. That's the human needs, human behavior, and consumption structure changed a lot. Previously, that's many of the farmers, they are the producer of the food. Nowadays, they become the consumer. In this case, we meet a lot of challenge. And those 4 driving forces are regarded as the key driving force and for China in the last 60 years. Now I want to come to the second. I don't know where it come. I want to come to the second one. The great challenge faced to China. I want to say what can be the current problem. And we meet the dilemma, we meet the conflict, and this challenge we need to deal with. Consumption structure, the second. And first for Chinese case, and we need to meet the food security. Because there's 1.3 billion of population, we need to feed that. We cannot depend on the food trade of the world, because the total amount of trade of the world for food is only equivalent to 20% of the Chinese need. So we need to be self-sufficient. But the land is occupied by the urban, and the arable land is becoming the township. And where is the land? And the fertile lands in the south part of China is open to becoming the industry. And nowadays, Chinese food production is much depend on the south part of China and much depend on the marginal land of arable land. This is where we need to consider what should we do for the next stage. The second challenge, and we meet, is about the burden of the population. How to deal with such a big amount of population, and how to stabilize of the population flow. And the third one, we need to consider with the development process a big gap, and the gap between urban and rural becoming larger and larger, and the gap between west and the east becoming larger and larger. And those gaps will cause some of the social problem. That's with that's uneven equity, some social stability should be seriously considered, especially like the poverty issue. The third one, the fourth one for China is about the energy consumption and resource. And if we want to keep the current development process, to keep the current structure, and those we cannot sustain our growth. But no resource anymore, the environment is damaged in a very bad situation, and the way of the growth is moved to the end, to the end stage. And for energy, and China have a high emission country of CO2, and we need to find the new kind of energy. And for the environment, for the ecological situation, and China also needs to consider how to make our ecological situation and be back or more sustainable. In this case, we need to find out the new way of our development. The key issue for China is one is energy, and the second is about water. These two will be the key driving force for Chinese development for the next stage. This is the second one. The third one, I will come in short. What can be done for the next stage? Because current structure cannot last long.